What's going on, Illumineers, and welcome back to the Madhouse. And today we are talking week 2 of the LCCC, the legendary cross-continental clash brought to us by the champion of the people, Pavel himself, and it's going to be amazing. We have some great matches coming up, and you guys will not want to miss them. Just a recap of week 1 and week 2. On the left here, we have our week 1 winners, and on our right here, we have our players who haven't won yet. But I have no doubt that we're going to see these change coming into this next week. But it is going to be great. We have a lot of changes in the list, so we're going to kind of go into those and look at some of the changes. And you guys can, this is a really great look into how the players are just kind of changing their lists overall as time goes on, as the meta develops. And if you're having a hard time with blue steel, especially all these different variants, you can see what these big players are doing to combat blue steel. Because if we go to the next slide, you'll see we had 6 blue steel players in this event. And blue steel kind of has a really big leg to stand on for this event because remember, they can change cards in their list throughout the event after each round. They won't know their next opponent, but they can still change cards. So that means that these blue steel players, there's 3 or 4 different variations of blue steel right now, so they could just constantly mix it up so their opponent doesn't know exactly what to expect when they go into the match. But of course, these is just another kind of recap of what we're seeing. These are our matches over here that we're going to have: LD versus Moyen, Federico versus Artabax, Zach and Zan, Speci and Kurt, Sailor and Domingo, Mo and Theo, Diego and Ed, and The Rat and DKP. And of course, our head judge here, beautiful, Mr. Beautiful himself, Enchanted Phil. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start on the first list. And coming up first, we have Zan. This one's pretty simple. No change, right? The list is working for him. The thing about this blue steel combo items list is we keep seeing it pop up. There's not a lot you have to change with this list. It is very much a solitaire list. When you run this kind of thing, you're ultimately just trying to find what works best for you. And in this, we saw in the SLC, we saw Sky running a slightly different list, but he's a big fan of Chicha over at Oswald, being able to kind of guarantee something coming out of it. But for Zan, we heard Jeremy say himself, we don't need Oswald. So Zan just keeping Oswald because there's nothing wrong with a, turn 3 dime or double dime that we saw Zan actually do in his match versus DKP. So Zan just running with the same list. He said, until I lose, like, why change things up, right? Like, might as well keep it up. Next up on our list, though, we do have Ed, and if you guys will notice, we have a lot of changes. Last week, he was running more of kind of the DKP version. He had the vicious cheaters and things like that, and this week, he opted to go a different direction. He opted to throw in the baby Tamas. He still has the Fortispheres, of course, but no, even Fortispheres are different. So this time, running actually very different. Very interesting. So for a total amount of items, we have 4, 8, 12 items. So your win con in this is kind of, you of course have your 8 crabs, so your shiny crabs right here. You have a lot of removal with the big Sizus and the sapphire coils and baby Sizus, but you also are running these 4 Maleficents, which are great spot removal, being able to remove almost anything as long as it doesn't have ward. And then you can just kind of keep bringing things back. You can keep bringing back these items to get Tamatoa down in quest. This is going to be interesting because if your opponent's just able to easily answer those Tamatoas, you don't have a great win condition. You could quest for 3 here and quest for 2 and 2 here, but this is going to be really interesting. I'm really excited to see. If we go back here, Ed is going to be against Diego. So we'll kind of see how it goes, but very different list. Ed's kind of all over the place. We just saw him in a tournament where he was on Steel Song, and now we see a different version of Red Blue, but I'm liking it. Let's see how he does. Next up on our list, we have Sailor coming in, and Sailor making quite a few changes in his list. When we look at his list, it well, it's gone in a completely different direction because if you notice, no half sharks, no pirate's life. So just getting rid of that win condition, bringing in one dime, but also just a lot of removal. So you can just kind of grind your opponent out. And when you can get to those late game turns where you don't need to play dime, you just have enough ink and you just continue, maybe you can drop Tammy and dime in the same turn. Maybe you've grinded your opponent down so much that you can finally drop the Tamatoa and then drop the dime the next turn and get a bunch of lore that way. When we look at this, we're on 2, 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 items. So a lot of opportunity for Lucky Dime to get that extra lore. We have the Madame Medusas that work great with the ice blocks and the coils. We do have ice blocks. I think that when Sailor in his testing in his match against Speci, he realized that you can get that coil down and do brawls and things like that early, but it's just not quite as fast as just getting an ice block down on one, baby Sizu on turn 3. That's pretty quick and able to remove most things. So that's a pretty good turn. You'll also notice that Sailor threw in the Scrooge McDuck because why not play a free 4/4 that lets you dig for an item. Like, why not? There's with all these items, you throw it in here. There's no Grammatala, but they're kind of doing the same thing. When you're running I think I said 17 items, the odds of Scrooge McDuck seeing an item are extremely high. And it sucks when you don't. It happens, right? Look at any Steel Song player, but he'll most likely see it. The Cusco's being able to hit those dimes, hit those workshops or any other item and just get rid of it. So quite a different game going on here. Great Stone Dragons coming back, but I like it. I'm excited to see how this goes for Sailor. Is it time to sell those half sharks before they start plummeting? We're going to find out. Next up, we do have level 9001, Diego himself, and he has quite a few changes in his list as well. I think I counted 17 changes, but when you look at this list versus his week 1 list, he's opted to go kind of what we've been seeing a lot of these bigger butt characters. He cut the Cursed Merfolks, he cut the Clarabelle shift line, he's running the 4 Nala, and then we see the Lady and the Tramp combo. And we see Prince Phillips coming in here because he's just a great warded character that quests for 2. We see the Yzmas coming in that weren't there before. And of course, we've cut the Cloud Kickers. So we just see how the meta is developing to answer Blue Steel. These big butt characters right here are hard to answer. The Lady being able to get some easy lore still against Red Blue, or even if they can't answer Lady, still doing well. Prince coming down with great bodyguard in front of your piglets and stuff. And then, of course, we get the Tramp down, we cheat the Tramp down, and then you can cheat out a Chernobogs. We saw Dick Burns the other day on the SLC, or yeah, SLC. I think it's the yeah, SLC. We saw him play a Tramp into a Chernobogs all in the same turn. So the things that this kind of deck can do is pretty cracked. It's pretty awesome. This is slightly different. Not as many big butt 1-drops, but still things that this can do differently is trading in the board, all of your characters, not as many just 1-drop characters. So we'll see how it does. I'm excited for it. I love me some green yellow. I love me some green yellow Cherna dogs, as people have been dubbing it. I shout out to Rays. I think that was him that first started doing that. So next up on our list, we have Brian, and otherwise known as the Rat. And this time, the Rat running a very different list because in his week 1 list, we saw him on the item variant. We saw him on the Blue Steel item combo list. He's going back Kiwi. All right, this is the Kiwi of old with a couple of new cards. We see the Mulans coming in here, letting you kind of mulligan. Like, Mulan is kind of like why I ran Simba last set, in that if you have Mulan in your opening hand, you can hard mulligan for kind of that god hand that you want, because Mulan can dig you out of most things. It's a draw and a discard, so you can discard, a bricked hand. But even when you look at this hand, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So only 12 uninkable. So bricking is pretty slim anyways, but it's a good way to get rid of an extra dock as well. Anna is a sleeper character. You know that Anna being able to quest for an extra 1 if you have a hero in play. So if you have Anna down and an Alice down, Alice is a hero. So Anna quests for 2 that turn. If she lives, next turn she's questing for 3 because of Alice. And then she also has Ward. So just some really nutty things that this Kiwi can do, being able to just really pump out a bunch of early lore. Lawrence is coming in here, Gantus, because you give that ward with Alice, and then they better have B prep because otherwise you're getting 4 lore, 5 with the Alice plus 1 on your next turn. And then if they do B prep you, you just slam down a manor and then another manor and then maybe a third manor. Why not? So really cool. You'll see that they dropped the Let the Storm Rage on. So as we see this, maybe we can start seeing more hyper aggro come back, but I think it's too soon. I think it's too soon for that. I think this is a meta call that says, hey, I'm not going to need Let the Storm Rage on because there's just not as many targets for it. So I think the Rat's going to have a really, really good time with this list. Next up, we have Zach Bivens, and Zach going very different. All right. We still see, him and Wochuk running this shout out to Wochuk, right, for getting Neverlands and No Shift and Nala's off the ground, and then him and Zach Bivens working together to kind of build this list up to be this powerhouse that it's turning out to be. Personally, I'm still a big Shift guy, but we've seen the success of No Shift, and this time I want to bring to light this 5 2-drops, and there's a couple things that comes from this. With Blue Steel Song as popular as it is, Ursula and Troubadour are like the best things that Steel Song can do because they can't really answer it. They have to, for Ursula, they could double at the Storm Rage on their turn 3 if they're on the play. But otherwise, that's really it. And you can't do that to Troubadour. So getting these characters down or guaranteeing you see one in your opening hand guarantees that you have a Let the Storm Rage on, Along Came Zeus, things like that. But if we look at the rest of the list, we see the Big Cindy coming in because Big Cindy, again, really good into Blue Steel as well. It's really good into the hyper ramp kind of aerial version. It's good into the Blue Steel song, like all of the different variations. We do see that he's thrown in I Find My Platinum. I've given my opinion on that. I don't know if we need item removal, but this list is a little bit slower. When you run, more of these 1-drops, your list doesn't, you run the risk of not seeing as many of your 2 questers because you'll also notice he's only on 2 Lawrence and only 3 Smee. So he has cut 1, 2, 3 of his 2 questers. So where the list slows down, maybe you do need I Find My Platinum to give you a little bit more time. Looking at this, the last thing to bring to light is we're on 4 Cindy, but only 3 Let the Storm Rage on. And this goes back to the same idea in that there's not as many great targets right now for Let the Storm Rage on. So again, it might be getting better for hyper aggro to come back. Maybe we see a green yellow win on turn 4 hyper aggro line coming back as we see these singing lists getting rid of Let the Storm Rage on because there's not as many good targets for it. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'm excited to see how it goes. Ed also ran a list this past weekend. He got 5th with it with no Smees and instead 4 Troubadour, 4 Ursula. Maybe there's something there. Let's see what happens. Next up on our list, we do have Kurt Spice. And Kurt, with only a couple changes, he went ahead and added the 4th Pete, which I think is a great idea. I think that this Pete, the Shift Pete, is so amazing. It is such a great card. It is such a powerhouse of a card. He is a beautiful, sexy pirate cat. thing, and he's just doing so many things. He's a 5/5, shift 4, he quests for 2, your opponent can't sing songs, and all your pirates get resist +1 as well as you as long as you're exerted. So something to note about that, when you challenge into something, you get the +1 because you exert to challenge. And if you sing something, like all those different things that could happen. So just really effective card. And then of course we have the 2 Crickies instead of the 2 Lucifers, which I think is a good move. So to make room, he cut the 2 Lucifers and the 1 Muse and made the 2 Crickies and the 1 Pete. And I'm on board. I don't think you can cut Muses all together, but I think we're getting to the point where I think 2 is about as far as you want to go, because at this point, most of the time, Muses is only bouncing your own characters. So you can bounce Doc and use Doc, bounce Ursula. Maybe you just want to see what's in their hand and you bounce Diablo. That can be really effective too. So I'm excited. I'm always excited to see how Green Steel does. I think Green Steel gets more and more intriguing every set. So we'll see. And then Kurt, of course, is, an Amber Steel guy. That's how I know him. So I'm rooting for him a little bit. Next up on our list, though, we do have my boy Mo. Mo is an amazing human being. Had him on the channel with green purple, but this time running green blue, and I do love me some Baja Blast. And look at this name, Bleen V9. The LCCC won't let me be me. So let me see. What a name. But let's talk about the list. When we look at this list, it's doing some stuff, right? We do see Coil and Under the Sea coming back. I recently made a post on Twitter about my testing with Baja Blast has been fun because I think it's a fun deck, but it's been tough. Baja Blast needs to figure out where it's at, and I do think it can. But there are some major things that are holding it back. That being the Shift Pete. Shift Pete just shuts down this deck 100%. And it's what do you do? But with that being said, if we go back to pairings, Mo is against Theo, so he doesn't have to worry about Shift Pete. But too far. But looking at the list, we see the Ink Geyser and the Bend to My Will. I've been a huge fan of Ink Geyser. I think Ink Geyser is such a phenomenal card, and if you haven't been testing it yet, give it a try. You can do so much when you put your opponent back to 3 ink. I love this card. But the rest of it is your normal kind of green-blue package. We see the ramp, we see the muses, Grammatala, a lot of draw. The McDuck Manners, being, in my opinion, your biggest win con, especially with Ink Geyser. If you get to that point where you can just slam some McDuck Manners, you get a board, you slam some Manners, you Ink Geyser them. Now they can't interact with your board and your McDuck Manners because they can't play anything. So, and then of course you have Under the Sea, which is just a great way to remove your opponent's board and deal with things. So I love to see it. I'm always happy to see more Baja Blast, so I'm excited to see how you do, man. It's gonna be great. Next up, we do have Moyen, and Moyen is running, of course, Blue Steel, and this time made a couple changes. And if I look at the list, looks like we cut a Cogsworth and we cut a Pete, and it is a mixture. I recently talked about someone who took this list to and split in their top 4 with the list, and they really liked it. And it's kind of a mixture of what's going on. It is a combo. It has the combo pieces, but at the same time, you can fight for board. You have, of course, the Cogsworth coming in here to help the bells. And Cogsworth just helping these characters live. All of a sudden, your Tamatoa can't be, taken out by a Zeus because there is this +1. Your Scrooge McDuck has like all these characters. So they live forever. They sing songs. You draw, you get your lucky dimes down, and you just do some really nasty things. Now, I think this list could have Smee. Personally, I think Smee with that Cogsworth is going to be really effective, and I think that's something that could be looked at. But I think this list is really good. I think this is a great way to run it, and I'm excited to see how it does because I do really like this version. This kind of combo tempo controlled. I don't know. It's just it feel when I look at it, I like this more than the super hyper combo draw my whole deck list. So, and I think I like it. No, don't run this list. I don't want anyone to run this list because I think Steel Song will have a harder time into this list. So just don't. Okay. Moving on though. Excited to see this game, Moyen. Next up on our list, we do have Artabax, and look at this list. Now, I have a feeling, I have an idea about this list, and I could be way off, but originally when there all the pairings were made at the very start, and Pavel had made a post about, hey, second round pairings aren't correct. It's going to be changed up, and so it's still completely randomized as far as winners and losers and such. But originally, Artabax was supposed to be against Kurt Spice in that first, pairings thing that Pavel said, hey, don't pay attention to the round two pairings. Those aren't correct. And I think Artabax missed that message because this is very teched for Kurt Spice. The magic broom is the big giveaway here. That that magic broom in here for the Diablo, and then you have to let the Storm Rage on for the Diablo, and the Chin Po, the Mickey Mouse, just hard to deal with for Green Steel. But unfortunately for Artabax, he is not playing against Kurt Spice. If we go all the way back to the beginning, Artabax is against Federico. So we'll see how he feels about, about these changes. Maybe I'm way off. Maybe he thinks this is the way forward for Blue Steel. Maybe he's got the right idea. We'll find out. But this list, I think if you expect a lot of green steel, I think this is the way to go. The magic brooms being great, the Mickey Mouse hard to handle, being able to stick around and just getting these characters out. You go Pete on 3, Strength of a Raging Fire on 4 to blow up their Ursula. And yeah, I think it's a good list, but we'll see how it goes. It's still very tempo. It's still that Artabax green purple tempo kind of list. And I still think it will be fine. It's just a little more wonky. But again, maybe this is the way forward that Artabax in pictured. We'll find out in the post-game interview because I hope they ask. But next up on our list, we do have DKP. And DKP, of course, I think he has a thing with the number 3 because going into game 1, he made 3 changes from his Melbourne list. Going into game 2, he made 3 changes from that list. And looking at the list, he decided to cut the 2 Gramatalas, the 1 Goofy, and threw in 2 Tamatoas and 1 Flaversham. And I do think that's a good move. I think it's a little bit harder to run Goofy in this into the tempo Blue Steel. It's acceptable, right? Because they're going to be turning sideways. But the item variant, right? The super like the Zan match, Goofy was all but useless because Zan just doesn't have to turn sideways, right? Except for Hiram Flaversham. But you also don't want to let Flaversham stick around forever because you don't want Flaversham to draw them even more cards. So I think Goofy loses a little bit more of his effectiveness when you don't know what kind of blue steel you're going to be playing into. But I think that adding more Tamatoas is a great idea. Little light on the items, but one thing we see this deck do really well is it can dig really, really well. Unlike hopefully he doesn't have something like game 3 against Zan where he revealed the top like 5 cards of his deck, and I think it was 3 visions and 2 develop your brains. So as long as he avoids that, the deck can dig really well. You have visions, you have Alfaro go, develop. You do lose the Gramatalas digging, but you have another Flaversham. You have 2 more Tamatoas to get even more draw going. And of course, the Maui Half Shark being able to bring back visions, develop your brain, Pirate's Life, How Far I'll Go, all these ways to continue to dig and gain lore for cheap and into a blue steel meta where they have to turn sideways to do stuff, there's a good chance you're gonna get them back. So I'll be interested to see what happens. I am interested if there's ever a world where this list could throw in Shield of Arendelle. I mean, just getting a Shield of Arendelle down, and then you're able to get a Maui out, and then banish the shield to give Maui resist +1, guaranteeing that Maui lives an extra turn. So maybe the blue steel, they then can't quest that turn. Sure, they'll blow up Maui the next turn, but you still slowed them down for a turn while you get to continue to dig and develop your win conditions. I don't know. I don't play red blue. Just I don't know, just an idea as we try and keep, the one of well, a really big piece of the deck alive. So we'll see how it goes. Again, always great fun watching DKP run this deck. So we'll see. Next up on our list, we do have Theo, and Theo running more of a mixture again. So in this blue steel list, we do see the Smees, the Petes, the Scrooges, like, the Crabs and the Scrooges just being so good. So this top line really being the core of Blue Steel, and then you add in, the song package. So we see a lot of items, lucky dimes, but we throw in a couple manners because, well, why not? It's a pretty good card. It's a gaining 2 lore for 9. So that card is difficult for Blue Steel to deal with, because if they want to deal with it, they're not questing with Tamatoas, they're not doing singing with the Scrooge McDucks, whatever it may be. But I think this is a really good list too. I think you're just, you're gaining that passive lore with the Smees, doing all these nasty things. When we look at the items, we're at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 16, 17, 18 items. I think Shield of Arendelle and something cannon, fire the cannon maybe. I think they're both really good. And I think you run them for very different reasons. The resist +1 keeps your Tamatoa alive, but the cannon lets you challenge into manners. The cannon lets you challenge a Smee can now take out a Tamatoa. A Smee, well, it gives challenger +3. So, I mean, if anything, your Tamatoa can challenge your opponent's Tamatoa. So that's something as well. So there's just there's a lot of options. And again, we just continue to see Blue Steel develop. And at this point in the game, you just never know what variant you're going into. And that can be a scary thing. That can be a really, really scary thing. So we'll see how this goes. And best of luck, Theo. And then I believe we have we have a couple more. So next up on our list, we do have Domingo, and Domingo not running, well, as you can see, not mill this time, running what we're seeing develop as the new red purple. And this red purple, we're seeing a lot of this location love. And I think I don't I know that I think it was Terrace is his name. He kind of showed people at the SSC, or the SSG, the Southside Gaming 10 case event, what running red purple with a lot of locations can do. I don't know how much of the rest of this list is similar, but I do remember Terrace kind of highlighting, hey guys, why don't we run a bunch of locations, make them answer these, and if they answer our characters, look at all the stuff we're going to draw. And so that's a big deal as well. So we'll see. Is this the way forward for red purple? And if it is the way forward, is it good enough for red purple to be able to thrive? Because at the Southside Gaming, unfortunately, Terrace wasn't able to make that top 8, I believe. So maybe this is, but again, is it the way forward that makes red purple able to win consistently? We're gonna find out. We'll see what Domingo can do. A world's qualifier winning the European championships. I think there's like a cheer in there. If he can't do it, nobody can, right? So we'll see how it goes. Lots of burn, lots of draw, locations kind of burn kind of thing. So I'm excited. I think it's gonna be good. I love seeing Red Purple succeed. Red Purple is a great matchup for Steel Song. So let's go, Red Purple. Let's go. All right. Next up, we do have Federico on Red Blue. And when we look at Federico's list, um, it might be the same. I'm looking over here at last week's, and I think Federico did run the same list. I may be wrong. If I am wrong and I missed this slide, I will put the Dreamborn in the comments. All right. I'll put a comment. So I will pin it and say, hey, I was wrong. Federico has a different list. But right now it looks like Federico is running the same exact list. Actually, I'll check right now. We're going live. We're checking, is his list any different? No, he is running the same list as last week. So just like Zan, he said, "Hey, why not? Why not run the list? I won last week. I was the only red blue player to win last week. Maybe I have the golden goose. Maybe I have the answer for red blue. Maybe everyone just needs to follow what I'm doing." We're gonna find out, and we'll see how Federico does in this next week. So moving on. Yeah, yeah, no changes. No changes at all. Moving on, we do have Speci, all right? So Speci running, of course, his burn deck, story deck. I don't know the story behind. No. Yeah, I don't fully know the story behind that. I tried listening. Shout out to Moyen and Speci, right? I think they might be the most entertaining casters I have ever heard for any event before. Huge shout out to those guys. I think story has something to do with changing burn or lethal, but I really like Lorthal. Anyways, the deck list, right? We have a deck list here. Let's talk about it. It is different from week one. We're seeing, and it's only slightly different. When we look at this list from week one, he does have the 4 Maleficents in here. All right. When we looked at week one, I don't believe he did. There were a couple issues with the list, but when we look at this, it is just nasty aggro, right? Amethyst Chromacon, because I don't care if my opponent has a bunch of cards. If I just win, right? If I get to 20 lore, who cares if I'm drawing you a bunch of cards? Because when I draw cards, I'm gaining 2 from Cobra. I'm gaining another one from Goat, potentially one from Honey Lemon or Honey Marin. There's no roses in this list, actually. Yeah, I'm looking over here. No roses in this list. So that will be interesting. I'm interested to see how that goes. I know Speci's been running this kind of list a lot lately on stream. So maybe he realized I just don't need roses. It just slows me down. Let me run all these one drops. Let me, just do all these other things, and I have enough burn with the Honey Marin, with the Goat, with the Cobra, and then of course the bounce, being able to do, these crazy bounce things. So I'm rooting for you, Speci. Like I feel like you're the underdog, right? We look at all these players, they all have golden. I think almost all of them have golden Mickeys, worlds qualifiers, day 2 players, and then we have Speci, and Speci just being I think he's the underdog, right? I really do. And this isn't, like throwing shade or anything by any stretch of the imagination. He just doesn't have a golden Mickey, and he doesn't have a day 2 like a lot of these other players in this event do. So huge shout out to you, man. I'm excited to see how it goes, and I'm always rooting for you. So it's gonna be good. And fun fact, I believe this deck is like $80. So check it out, guys. Check out some burn. Last up on our list, we do have Lorcana deck list, and Lorcana just running a really, did I double post this? Hang on, guys. We have to check something out here. Did I double post? No. So they had the same idea. So if we look at the rat here, I just wanna make sure that I'm again giving you guys, yeah, it's the right information. So they had the same idea. So, Theo over here, or sorry, Lorcana Decklist LD, going back to the Kiwi variant, alright? So in his list, though, he is, of course, running the Annas, the Alices, because we talked about that earlier. It's just such a great combo. We do see the Cogsworth coming in, which I think is a great part of Kiwi, that the ability to go something like Mickey into Anna, into Alice, into Pluto, into Cogsworth, unless you have B prep, what do you even do against that board? That is just such a nasty board for anyone to deal with. And you have Baymaxes, you have, a sticky Mickey shift line, because why not? And I think it's just I think I think it's a good list. If you like tempo, you guys need to try this stuff out, right? You need to try Kiwi out. If you were a big tempo player last set and you haven't tried Kiwi, check it out. Shout out to Harlan and Jax for really, pioneering this. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else, but yeah, Kiwi, just it's here to stay, because what it does is just really good. So check it out. But yeah, this will be a fun one to watch as well. Shout out to you, LD. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all of them. I wanted to get this list out to you guys. We're going to have our first match on the what is tomorrow? We're going to have our first match on the 19th of March. So I'm going to publish this video on the 19th of March, but we're getting right into round 2. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I completely forgot your Disney trivia, so we'll get one next time. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy the video, and remember, as always, nothing matters more than stay happy and healthy. I'll see you guys around.